So yeah, as I was saying, the topic for tonight is looking at Indigenous and also Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders and looking at what it means for them. Well, we'll look at it fairly broadly. This one specifically refers to cultural safety. I'm not sure if cultural safety is a term you're familiar with, but it essentially just means it's referring to what can be done to make people feel safe and included and in their culture and also acknowledged and have their needs met. I think the last webinar, actually, I touched a little bit on just asking people to think about their own culture and some cultural needs that they may have, and as a way of starting to connect with what it feels like when you have cultural needs, and therefore what other cultural needs people might have. Hi, Jess. It's still not working, so I'm just going ahead with it. I don't know why the option is blacked out. Hold on, this is just giving me an option. No, I don't think that'll do it. Anyway, keep going. Open that up. Yeah, so and I was asking in that one for us to think about some cultural needs that we might have, and then to sort of use as an embodied experience of, oh, this is what my culture is, and these are my needs, and this is what it feels like to, even in my body, or to think about what needs I have. And hopefully Alice doesn't mind, but we talked about this in person the other day, and, you know, we're talking about Alice being Chinese. We've got Chinese New Year coming up. And so if she's in a workplace, or you have a Chinese person in your workplace, you're aware that Chinese New Year is a big part of the culture. Now, we can't assume that it's big for everyone, you know, because there's always going to be, everyone has an individual relationship to these things. But yeah, just assuming in this case it was, you know, you're a workplace, just an acknowledgement of that, or maybe some celebration around that, or whatever is, you know, one tangible, practical way that could be met. So that's some of the cultural safety sort of feel of it. So I'm going to look at these slides and be turning my head, and I'm not going to be looking at you guys. How will I do this? It's all right. So just look at, and also, oh, by the way, I'll send you guys these slides. So it's annoying we can't like look at them in real time, especially for those of you that are visual learners, but I can give you a copy, so you're able to go over that stuff later. So the objectives of this unit, there's 4 here. Now this unit in the past would be taught, you know, over a day or maybe 2 days for the in-person students. And so what I've essentially done is tried to distill some of the major points from this unit that would be covered in a couple of days, or maybe 1 day depending, and just reduce it down. So I'm going to try and get to the heart of things, but we're just not going to cover everything. And so I've had to chop out, you know, quite significant parts of the unit. But the idea of these webinars isn't for me to deliver huge amounts of content. It's about, you know, answering questions, connecting with each other, and a little bit of your own input, a little bit of trying out your own ideas and knowledge and that kind of thing. And, you know, a bit of sense of connection so you guys don't feel so isolated, because it can be quite isolating working online. So yeah, objectives: identify cultural safety issues in the workplace, model cultural safety in our own work, develop strategies for improved cultural safety, and evaluate cultural safety strategies. So I had the acknowledgement here on the slide I was given, and I thought it'd be good to just go through this. Even though we normally do it when we're in person, just the acknowledgement of country. I think it's really valuable. We acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional lands from the Kaurna people, the Ghana people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge that the Ghana people, as the custodians of the Adelaide Plains, so they're right across Adelaide, and that their cultural heritage and beliefs are still as important to them that are living today as they were in times gone past. We also pay respects to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people who are visiting. So we're talking about Torres Strait Islander people tonight, which are not from this region but may be visiting, attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia that are present. And I thought, yeah, it's really good to just start with that, especially for this unit, because it's starting to touch on one significant thing that you guys have probably all come across that's changed in Australian society. I don't know, maybe the last 10 or 15 years, I've noticed more this acknowledgement of country, to pay respect to the culture of the Indigenous Australians. Is that something you guys are familiar with? Is that something you've come across in other contexts?
We do at work. We've got Aboriginal clients
Mm-hmm.
at work, and we've actually got one of the carers that was working up at Northern Territory that's actually joined us, that has made us understand that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. What aspect of it did they kind of mention?
Well, there's a lot of tradition involved, so we had to bring in the Aboriginal culture into our facility, because they have a lot of beliefs to the land.
Yes.
And
Yes.
because she's not well, they have their own healers that they've had to bring in as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
So being flexible in your workplace for that kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the first YouTube that I was going to play over my shared screen. It's only a few minutes long. If I send it through in the chat, are you guys right to watch it?
Yeah. How do we click onto that?
I'll give you the link.
Okay.
I think I'll give you the link. Why is it not? Oh, there we go. Copy. Paste. I'm just going to click it and make sure it's popping up.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Things were pretty bad in Echuca. Echuca was a pretty racist little town. We were only allowed to.
You're going to have to mute yourselves, otherwise we're going to have 10 versions of that. So it's about 8 minutes. So if you want to just watch that, and then we'll come back together. I'm gonna watch it as well as we go. So.
How do I stop it? No. How do I stop it? How do I get rid of it? No.
I muted myself. No wonder no one's talking back to me. Can you guys see the PowerPoint?
No,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get rid of YouTube.
Yeah, at the bottom.
Yeah. Oh, is it the bottom? Oh, I see. Yeah. Is that it?
Alice, can you see the PowerPoint? Or did you just see my face?
Yeah, I can see your face, but where's PowerPoint?
It should say Forever Learning. I worked out how to share it.
Yeah, I can see.
You can.
Yeah.
Good. So you can see my face and the PowerPoint.
Yep.
Brilliant. Are you guys the same, the rest of you, Jess and Sharon and Gautam?
Yeah, I think for me, the video is still on.
Yeah, I've still got the YouTube thing going on in the background.
Okay. Are you able to close down that web browser?
I'll see if I can. Where is it?
Yep.
Jess, are you able to see the PowerPoint on your screen? Should be saying Forever Learning and
Yes,
then my
yes.
face.
Yep.
Gautam's got it. Sharon, can you see it? I need some feedback, guys. I need to know if it's working. I'm not getting any nods or anything.
Yep, I can see that.
I heard Gautam
Fine.
saying yes.
I can see your screen, but I can't stop YouTube.
Okay.
Um,
What web browser are you using?
I don't know.
Maybe
Maybe
Google
press
Chrome?
escape.
Or are you on a PC or a Mac? You're muted now, Linda, so I can't hear you.
Yeah, and on a laptop, I'm trying to minimize so I can
Yep.
get rid of it, and I can't.
On a PC laptop or a Mac?
Yeah. Oh no,
Okay.
now I've lost
If you just go Control Alt Delete,
Yeah.
bring up Task Manager,
Okay.
you should be able to see the web browser that you have running. I don't know if it's Google Chrome or Internet Explorer or maybe Firefox.
Okay.
Can you see that one of those?
Hold on a sec.
I lost it. All right, so everyone else can see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Jess? All right, so it seems a few of you can't hear me. Gautam's hearing me.
Yes.
Alice, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, so you can see the PowerPoint.
Yep.
And Jess can see it?
Forever Learning?
Yes. That's it. Okay,
Cool.
looks like it's definitely working. And you got your YouTube fixed up, Linda?
That's gone. Yep.
Okay. And we have Desiree. He's come at the right time because we're just about to get going on the PowerPoint. No, that's not true. We did watch the video. So after all that, that was a beautiful video, wasn't it? Beautiful story. Yes. You guys have any, what did it bring up for you guys?
Yeah, it highlights the importance of having a culturally sensitive environment. That indirectly boosts one's self-esteem.
At others.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, I think future inclusion, where they are getting them ready to go into schools and also with the teachers, having their feeling of two cultures coming together and feeling the inclusion within the community.
Yeah, there's that sense, isn't there, that it's the type of approach that's needed to actually, if Indigenous folk are going to try and operate in the Western system, then there needs to be a bridge. That seems like they're actually creating bridges that are actually going to help and empower them because they're actually culturally relevant. Lovely. One last question. You can see Forever Learning. Can you see your guys' faces as well?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you might be able to. It's like, if I put it there, I just don't want to be looking over here, what I haven't told you is I've got 2 screens and a laptop. So you think it's confusing having 1 screen. It's next level with 3. That's very, very useful. All right, so yeah, I almost removed that video because it's not directly related to mental health, but I thought, well, we're looking at, cultural diversity generally, specifically the Indigenous culture, and I just thought it's such a good, tangible, practical example of early intervention. If you put a kid into an environment that they're not equipped for, it's going to cause stress. It could even be traumatic depending on how it all plays out. And that can develop into mental health issues as time goes on. And, tempted to say when they become teenagers and when they become adults and that kind of thing. But we're seeing more and more mental health diagnoses in younger folk as well. Enormously sad. But it's the early intervention strategies that can help nip that in the bud before it actually gets out of control. I'm not going to go through all of these slides just because of time, but I did want to show these videos also because I think that they're powerful, especially for those of you that didn't grow up in Australia. Maybe some of this will be new for you. But it's going to be a bit of luxury this time. You should be able to watch it without having to click on a link. So here we go. Is it going to open? Speak too soon. Here we go. You can hear it.
Damn internet.
Can you guys see? Can you guys see it now?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Is it supposed to have sound?
You're not getting the sound?
No.
It must be. Huh. Well, what I'll do is I'll just take my sound off. Audio here. Select the speaker. I think this one will do it. Okay. What's happening is the sound's coming through my headphones.
Ah, maybe you have to unplug them. No.
Yeah, well, they're Bluetooth, so if I disconnect
okay.
them, then I'll lose it. Which, I mean, I can do that, but I just switched it to the stereo sound, like the actual computer. Select the speaker. Sorry about this, guys.
No.
Apparently, when I share my screen through Zoom, it doesn't also share the sound, which is a bit odd. I think we'll just skip out on this one. We're going to use up too much time. You'll be able to watch it when I send this to you. Unless you, I mean, I can send you the link again, like I did last time. Was that too much of a headache doing it that way?
Oh.
Yeah, we can do that.
We can do that? All right, I'll do that.
I might have to leave and come back. My internet's just a bit dodgy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm making a mental note of all the all the things that's not working with this. All right, I'll send it through on the chat. So. There we go.
Wait. Where's the... There it is.
Did that work?
Yep.
Cool. I just found share computer sound. Can you guys still hear? Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
I'll give this a try.
Okay. Oh yes.
I haven't even clicked it yet. You're already hearing
That's
it.
mine. That's mine starting.
There we go. Share computer sound.
Thanks, darling. Sorry.
Yeah, where am I?
Here it comes.
Where am I?
Please work.
You hearing it?
Not yet.
The share computer sound.
got something green in the back. Oh no, that was working.
It was working.
It must have.
I could hear it. It was very loud.
Yeah, that's
This
right.
is a comedy of errors. I can't hear it, but you can. All right, I'll do it again. I'm sorry. You have to turn down your speakers. So what did you guys make of that? Was that new information for any of you guys?
No.
No.
Not for Linda, not for Desiree?
I'm familiar with this information.
Yeah. about you, Gautam?
Yeah, I'm familiar with this.
Oh, that was you. Sorry, I thought it was Desiree. Sorry, because I can't see your face. I can't see your video. I couldn't see you. What about you, Desiree? Flip it around.
No, nothing new.
Nothing new. Okay.
I think we've got lots to answer for, haven't we?
We sure do.
Hmm.
We sure do. Yeah, I was interested to, get a reaction for anyone if it was new information. I'm kind of glad that, at least people are known, being informed. People know of the situation. Just trying to. I'm going to have to put your faces here, otherwise I can't actually talk to you guys. What did it bring up for you guys? What is it? Does it bring up emotions? What are your thoughts about cultural safety when you watch a video like that?
I just think the reason why white people treat Aboriginal people differently is because they didn't know too much about them. They don't know their cultures, so what happened. Yeah.
I would agree. So you cut out. Did you finish or did you cut out?
I finished.
Finish, yeah. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what I was thinking about. What about others? I love input. It's hard for every video.
I don't know.
Awkward, but yeah.
I get really annoyed with this sort of subject because it's taken till now to react and to change and do something. And I know it's really good that at the moment, we're sort of changing, but it's taken us a long time to get here, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah. I've been doing youth work for a couple of years now, and I had a client at a house I was working at a few years ago, about a year ago now. There was a few clients in the house, and one particular young man was an Indigenous youth. He was about 15 at the time when I was working with him. And I remember on one particular day he was saying about how he doesn't want to be another statistic. And he was really trying to go straight and do the right thing. And at that time, he was just on that verge where he was doing all right, and he was making good choices. As I had a bit more to do with him over a few weeks after that, and I can't remember, I was listening to a podcast or something, but a few things fell in place. Where the penny really dropped for me, not only have we, come and taken over a country that wasn't ours to take over and inflicted just unspeakable trauma, but this narrative that we've provided for these people, as we're saying, we're starting to become aware, which is great. This narrative of this victim narrative, I saw it in this young man, and it just absolutely, the penny just dropped, and it was quite overwhelming to see that he'd been given and he'd taken ownership of a narrative which was, what happened to my people is wrong, it was unjust, which, couldn't agree more, don't disagree at all. And then, and I'm a victim of that, and even still the wrongs haven't been righted. And it was so deeply embedded in him to be, wrongs were done to me, and kind of like using it as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
The guy ended up, I mean, I don't need to go, I could talk about it for quite a while, but, you know, keep the story short. He ended up going quite badly off track, and at this point, he's quite wrapped up in the criminal justice system. He's become quite violent and a whole heap of things. And it's like, I saw the writing on the wall. I was like, he doesn't want to become another statistic, and yet the whole narrative he's been given since birth is you're a victim and you deserve
more.
It's like he deserves reconciliation, and he deserves for the wrongs to be righted, but he doesn't deserve to be, I don't know, you get what I'm saying, like treated special, or it's a very, very hard balance to grasp. Because we've all had things that we could use as that narrative. And so this is a long way of saying there's been this secondary trauma, or keeping the Indigenous people in a powerless position by continuously giving them this narrative, and then setting up a system that they get reliant on rather than a system that actually empowers them. That's why I love that first video. And then the second part connected to this that I wanted to talk about was the generational trauma. So we've got an ongoing narrative, we've got an ongoing story that continues to disadvantage. We've got, systemic injustice. So we've got a system which disadvantages Indigenous Australians, even though at times they're entitled to certain material things. There's still a lot of systemic injustice, things they can't access, things they can't do. But then we've got generational trauma. And I've got to be careful I also don't get off track on this one, because it's a bit of a passion of mine, that the whole area of trauma and that kind of thing, but so relevant to the Indigenous story. And what they did a study a while back where they actually studied the children of Holocaust survivors.
Okay.
So these are children that literally did not live through the Holocaust, and yet their parents did, but they were born in America. There was a study that was done in America, born in America, grew up in America, and yet they showed the same signs and symptoms of trauma and PTSD that their parents showed. And there's a thing called epigenetics. You can look it up later. It's, not directly relevant for mental health, but the outcome of the study was to show that there's actually in our genes trauma that is passed on from one generation to the next to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got with the Indigenous Australians, we've got the conscious narrative story, but then we got all the unconscious genetic stuff that's being passed on. And so I just sort of wanted to highlight that, because it's not something that we talk a lot about, we hear a lot about, we even understand a lot about. But if we're going to bring, healing, and not just reconciliation, but also healing, we need to start to actually look at the trauma, the mental health issues that are actually being carried on. Whilst we might meet a young person or even a not so young person who's not part of the stolen generation, they may still be carrying that trauma in their bodies, in their very genetics.
Or it could have just affected their parents and how their parents raised them.
Yeah, the narratives.
Yeah.
And the fear and
We had an elder that came to the care facility, and she was saying that when we think about the generation at the moment, we've got 3 generations happening, and the eldest one is actually children from the stolen generation, so it's continuing, and it's only really 3 generations that are still alive. So, like you said, it's passing through, isn't it?
Yes. And I realized what I was thinking, but I didn't say out loud. And what I'm trying to do with explaining all this is to counter that story that we hear, that Indigenous people, they're just entitled, they're lazy, they're living off the system, we apologise to them, they just need to get on with it, they just need to get over it. I only saw someone saying almost that online just the other day. And we actually start to understand that trauma's not that easy. We know that. It's not that easy to get over. And if we start to think, well, it's not just the trauma they've experienced, but it's actually the trauma of their people, it gives us a bit more empathy, gives us a bit more grace. And we've all got the same thing. We've got the same thing from wherever we've come from as well. So whilst I'd love to labour on that area because it's something I'm passionate about, I want to show you this next video as well. I'm going to assume the audio works right in the chat if it doesn't. And this is more contextualised to actually the care industry and working with Indigenous folk as clients. There we go.
You know, one of the principles that we talk a lot about in the placements that we run with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is that it's really important to be client-centred, to understand the client's context. There's enormous diversity amongst Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, so you can't expect that the first person that you meet and talk with and work with as a therapist or as a student is going to have the same context as somebody else. So, you know, there might be some people that you work with, some families that you work with who, you know, are from middle class families and, might be similar to my background, but then there's going to be other families that I might work with who, you know, come from families that, you know, have really struggled with poverty or have other socio-economic difficulties, or there are other social determinants of health at play. And I think that understanding of the social determinants of health is really key to working in this area, that we need to understand that whole context of somebody's life, not just that, you know, they're the person sitting in front of us with the broken hip or whatever it is, that, you know, they come with a context, with a family, and with a whole bunch of other skills and knowledge, and we need to be able to understand that in order to get the best outcomes. And that's really our job as a therapist or as a student working in this area, is to understand that context and knowing what is going on with that family or with that individual. And there's a bunch of different ways that we can do that. I think one of the most important things is about developing a relationship with our clients and taking the time to do that. And sometimes that might take a bit longer to develop trust because of the history that we've had in Australia, particularly with non-Indigenous health providers and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So it might just take a bit longer to build that relationship, but it's, in terms of getting the outcomes that you want, it's really, really critical that we do that. And I think the other thing that we don't mean to do as therapists or as students, but we often get, particularly students, get bombarded with knowledge at uni about, you know, the sort of statistics around Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So, you know, we know that there are poor health outcomes and poor education outcomes and poor employment outcomes. And we don't mean to, but we can sort of make this subtle shift subconsciously to therefore, you know, when we hear about, you know, an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander client, we think about the deficits and we think about the problems, and we don't think about the strengths and the resiliences. And just like we would with any other client, you know, in occupational therapy, we're taught to see the child or the person with the disability, not the disabled person. And it's the same kind of principle, that we need to see the client who's in front of us, who comes with strengths and resiliences and skills and abilities and knowledge, and it's an opportunity for us to build on those things and to tap into those things, rather than thinking that we're coming from this platform of, you know, deficit and dysfunction all the time. And I think that's probably a key shift that I think our students make when they're on placement with us, is really moving from that. You know, it's often a well-meaning thing. It's a there, you know, I want to help sort of thing, but it often often students come with this platform of, you know, all the need and the problems. And yes, there are needs, and yes, there are, you know, challenges, but there's also a lot of resilience and a lot of things we can learn as students and as practitioners that will then help us to be better at what we do through our interactions with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients. Okay. So in terms of understanding that context, there's some practical things we can do. So we've talked a bit about building relationships. We can also build really good relationships with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the environment around us. So if you're lucky enough to be working in an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander context, then there should be a good number of people around that you can draw on their knowledge and expertise. But if you're working in a hospital or a community health centre, it might be that you get to know the liaison officer, or it might be that if the client comes in with another family member, you build a relationship with that family member as well, and that also helps you understand that context and understand what other supports are in place with that person. Often it's not uncommon for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to have many services involved in them, but for none of those services to know who else is involved. So it's really important to find out, you know, what other help is out there for that client, what other things are going on, and how can we help them navigate the system as well, because we all know that the health system can be a bit tricky to navigate sometimes. So that's a really important aspect of what we do as well, is understanding what other kinds of support services are in place. And then also, you know, spending time out in the community, going to things like NAIDOC events, going to community days, gives you an opportunity to have a look at that client in a completely different context, to understand, you know, how Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people work together, how communities work together, so that we can get a better understanding of how all those bits of the puzzle kind of fit together. And then asking good questions, you know, not making assumptions, and maybe even asking those questions in different ways as well. Sometimes it might be, you know, asking a question and then coming back around to that question a little bit later and asking it in a slightly different way, or checking in with the information, because sometimes it takes a few goes in order to be able to get that complete picture, just as it would with lots of different other clients as well.
Okay. Current slide. That's interesting. Why is it going that way? You guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Any takeaways from that?
Yeah, we got to understand the client comprehensively. We got to see the whole person so that we get a better understanding of the context, so that we may match them to suitable services, not to make assumptions and generalizations. We need to understand the diversity within the Aboriginal groups.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah, the context matters so much, doesn't it?
Yep.
Anything else? Sharon, we haven't heard a lot from you tonight. What did that get you thinking about?
I think just the main idea is just not to make assumptions, because I think that is where we all go wrong, and we end up treating people wrongly because we are assuming that this is what is happening. So yeah, just like what's his name? The other guy has said, it's really important to look at the whole picture, and also you get to learn from people. Building relationships is very important. So we should learn to build relationships.
Yeah. And I loved how in the context of that they were saying, my takeaway was, you know, the asking questions and then reframing those questions and asking them in a different way. I consider myself quite good at reading people and interacting with people and that, and still, as I've been learning counselling and just working with clients in general, to see how many times I misinterpret, and especially when I'm working with people from other cultures. And so that reframing and asking and just clarifying as well, because depending on the cultural context, they might not feel as safe or as comfortable to express their opinion, express their view. They might not think you actually really, you know, and especially with a lot of Indigenous Australians, you know, they may have had painful experiences where services have let them down or people have let them down. So that's a great skill. That's very much a skill that can be used as support workers or different types of jobs in mental health. So we've got maybe about 15 more minutes. I'll keep pressing on here. We'll skip this one right now. I'm not going to go through the flags. What I wanted to just talk about as well here is this one. And I think Linda mentioned earlier, you mentioned something about an elder. Was it an elder that was part of your organisation?
Well, it was. It's actually a carer that worked with elders up at the Northern Territory.
Okay.
She, whenever she talks about her expertise up there, was always about auntie and uncles and mobs. They always call them mobs, and everybody knows everybody. So everybody comes together as a community. It's very cliquey.
Cliquey in a good way.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, aunties are known as aunties or uncles, and so it's really actually only the more modern societies that don't have elders that operate in this way. And even if you look in a lot of religions, we have it, and a lot of different cultures. Where are we go? Alice, would you have elders in Chinese society? Not really, or there's definitely great respect, isn't there, for?
We respect older people.
Yes. Oh, do you have a special name for older people?
Yeah, actually, in China, people like kids call all the older women like Nana, all the older men like Papa.
And actually, that's reminding me. You know, when I was in Thailand, there's a different prefix that you put before someone's name, which indicates if they're older or younger. If the person's older, there's a certain one, and that's a sign of respect.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about others? What about your own cultures? Gautam or Sharon or Desiree, non-Caucasian Australian?
Well, I'm from Kenya.
Yes.
And in Kenya, all the elders, it's either your father or your mother, and there's really a lot of respect for our elders. And if you are a young child, you're allowed to be disciplined. If you make a mistake, you're disciplined by any elder, because we live as a community. So if a child goes wrong, the community corrects that child.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Quite different, isn't it?
Yeah.
I spent some time in Zambia, let's say a few years ago. It's a lot of years ago now, but yeah, it's quite beautiful to see that culture at work. So I think you guys that come from cultures that naturally have this have a little bit of an advantage here. A little bit less natural for us white Aussies that are very used to our independence, not so used to interdependent type communal kind of thing. And it's the same for Indigenous Australians, you know, highly respected in the community, the elders are. And they're considered to have the trust and the knowledge and the understanding of culture, of their culture and the story. They've traditionally been the ones that have held the, passed on those oral traditions. where if you think about our society, Western society, we really promote not elders, but we promote the youth, we promote the young. Everyone's trying to be younger, everyone's spending money on trying to become more youthful. And so it's almost like an upside down kind of a thing. I'll leave it to you to decide which one's a wiser way to go. Trust the youngest people or trust the people that have been around a while. It's very interesting. The Aboriginal cultural history. It survived through hunting and gathering. And yeah, we talked about this earlier at the very beginning with the acknowledgement of country, that land is fundamental to the well-being of Aboriginal people. So they really see it as a spiritual relationship that they have with the land. They have, you know, they say that the further that you live, the more disconnected that you live from actual nature and the environment, the easier it is to make decisions that don't respect that, don't take care of that. You know, we're wreaking havoc on our environment, and it's because we're not living in that. We're kind of cut off from it in our little boxes inside of our offices and our houses. And I think there's a lot we can learn from actually the Aboriginal culture in that respect. They take great pride in personal and group identity, which we touched on a bit, and it would be similar to Kenya, I think, Sharon, that you were mentioning. It's group first and individual second. I think there's advantages to both, or good points to both things. But we could definitely use a bit more of that as well in our culture. And then this is what I was just talking about, you know, they really keep the heritage alive through passing it down generation to generation. That's a really sad thing at the moment, is all the languages that are becoming extinct. You know, it's easy to think, oh, Aboriginal Australians, oh, they're all the same. But there's actually, I don't actually know the numbers, but dozens, if not hundreds, of distinct Aboriginal cultures and languages. Does anyone know how many Aboriginal languages there are?
Oh, hundreds.
There's hundreds. But I have heard a number, but we're losing them because, you know, there's only small groups of people that know these languages, and as they die out, if they don't pass on those languages, as if that is getting lost as they become more westernized. There is an initiative, gosh, I'm terrible with remembering all the specific details, but there are some initiatives out there to try and save some of these languages and to try and keep them alive, but it's a very difficult thing to do. I'm sitting in a non-air conditioned room here, so I'm drinking litres of water. What's that?
I'm feeling your pain. I'm the same.
Yeah, I've got an air conditioner in the other room, but I got the fan going, but you know. So we're getting nearer the end here. I just want to check from the slides. I really had no idea how much we'd get through tonight. I want to check from the slides what other primary points I wanted to bring up. Well, we've got about 5 minutes. Maybe I'll open it up for questions right now. We're still sort of experimenting with this webinar format and how much we can cover. Very open to suggestions if you know, what will meet your needs, if you want more group activities, or if you want to go through certain questions, like specific questions in the assessment. And I can't give you answers, but I can sort of go through it and process it. So feel free to email me on that front. But I'm going to stop. I think I can stop the sharing now. Oh, maybe not. Oh, there we are. Stop share. So then I can close this. Then I can open up that. So do you guys have questions at the moment related to the course or